Restaurant Unstoppable episode 626 with Will McNeil. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, Will McNeil. My man, Will, are you feeling unstoppable today?
Certainly am.
Yes, that's what we like to hear. So born and raised in Burlington, Vermont, Will McNeil is a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America. After graduation, McNeil cooked at various locations before becoming a front of house manager for Hen of the Wood in 2006. By 2011, McNeil was offered partnership by Chef Eric Warnstedt. Fast forward to current date, and the team has scaled their operation to include Hen of the Wood, Burlington, Duck Ponds, Eat and Drink in Stowe, Vermont, and Prohibition Pig just down the road from their original Hen of the Wood in Waterbury, Vermont. I cannot wait to get your story and to dive into who you are and how you got to where you are today. But let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
It's just empowering each of our managers to make the right decisions and run our business for us.
Empowering your managers to make the right decisions and run the business for you. Dive into what that looks like.
No, we have a lot of love for our GMs, our front of the house assistant managers, all of our chefs and sous chefs who are actually at the restaurants running each restaurant on a day-to-day basis. We've gotten to the point where, unfortunately, my business partner, Eric Warnstedt, and I just can't be at each restaurant every single night of the week. And so we have built a phenomenal team around us that really are the heartbeat of our restaurant.
Man, I love it. And it's funny that you mentioned that because I just had this thought not too long ago. You hear a lot of people say it's not about serving food. We don't produce food. We produce an experience, right? That's what we're selling.
Oh, absolutely.
But I'll take it even a step further. And the most successful restaurateurs are doing food and experiences, but they really know that the true secret is producing professionals, turning up professionals, creating professionals, and it sounds like you guys understand that. That's where the sweet spot is.
It's totally that way. It's not, unfortunately, looking at the customer first as much as you might think. It's looking at your staff first and the customer right behind it, because if that staff isn't there and not caring, then you don't have anything to build upon.
Awesome. I love it. I cannot wait to dive into how you have recreated yourselves in your staff. But let's start where it all makes sense. When did you know that this was going to be your career, hospitality?
Well, mom at age 14 told me to get a job. And I went out and got a job at a restaurant that doesn't exist anymore, but it's called the Sirloin Saloon. It was on Shelburne Road, and I started washing dishes at 14 and worked all the way through high school in kitchens, just working my way up. And it just fell in love with the industry from the get-go. I was very fortunate that was my real first profession, was in restaurants, and I've never left.
So look back at this time, your first experience within the industry. What was going on? What do you remember it being like? What was the first impression?
At first, one of my first really memories was how freaking hot the dishes were coming out of the dish machine. And I had to touch them and put them away in their spots. And I just remember my hands just on fire from burning because the dishes were so hot and this high speed environment. But I just remember being I couldn't wait to get out of the dish pit. So I can't say that, but I worked my way up to salad bar prep for this big salad bar that they had there, and just can't wait to get a knife in my hand.
It's amazing how your pain tolerance goes up over the years, though, isn't
it? It really is.
So you transition. You're working from the dish pit. You transition to working in on the line. Take us through that transition.
So I transitioned first into what I said, salad bar prep, which is kind of like garde in a way. So all cold stuff. No real cooking or anything on that. And it was just about keeping the salad bar full, but she got you onto the restaurant floor, and you had to look clean and presentable and all of that, which was working in the dish pit. It's a little bit different environment back there. And then I transitioned onto the line and cooking because I really wanted to head in that route. And started cooking there. How
long did this transition take from being on dish to working the line?
It was about probably a 2-year transition.
Okay. And obviously somebody made an impression on you. The industry made an impression on you because you ended up going to school to study at CIA, Culinary Institute of America. Yeah. Is there any individual that made an impression on you?
Unfortunately, not during that time. I just really loved the work of it all.
Okay.
I took a job right after where I was solo cooking. And it was before culinary school. It was my senior year of high school. And it was a restaurant called the Cork and Board, and I was running their PM kitchen line, but I was the only employee.
Okay.
So I wasn't necessarily inspired by anyone, but I had a lot of motivational drive to learn more and do more, and it got me involved in every aspect of everything.
So what was it exactly that really sucked you in?
The love of the food. I remember actually talking to my stepdad about this, and I was considering the whole music route in life, and he was a professional jazz drummer, and him sitting me down and being like, everyone's got to eat. You should really think of that as your direction that you want to go. You can travel the world and do that anywhere you want to go.
Yep.
The opportunities are endless. You should really, really think about that. And then right around that same time, I had a teacher in high school who was super supportive of me and gave me Kitchen Confidential as a book. And that book really helped guide my life into wanting to go to the CIA.
What was it about that book? Give me an example.
Just the passion behind it. The true, honest passion in being at work and loving one's profession. And I just hadn't come across that. I mean, yeah, it was young in life, but I really hadn't come across anyone having like such a passion about their industry and what they do. I see a lot of people going through the motions, but just no passion or love behind it. And that's what really struck me in that book.
I love it. So when did you make the decision to go to the CIA? When did you commit to that decision?
My senior year of high school. I went right out of high school.
Nice.
Which, you know, I don't know if my mom was the biggest fan of not doing regular college. But yeah, no, I knew that was my drive, and she didn't give me too much of a hard time about it and fully supported me.
Did you do the 2-year program there? Or
Yeah, I did in Hyde Park, New York. I did the 2-year associate's program there, and it was on internship from that program is when I met Eric, working my business partner, Eric Warnstedt. He was the sous chef of a restaurant called Smoke Jacks, which was on the corner of Church and Main in downtown Burlington. I was a culinary intern, and yeah, he was the guy running the show every night. The chef ran the morning shift, and he ran the night, and we were this small little crew of team that ran this PM shift, and I was so fortunate to get to know him. And
I want to talk about that internship, but first I want to find out if there were any key mentors at the CIA, any key instructors that really imprinted on you, and to kind of find out who they are and how they imprinted on you, why they imprinted on you.
Now I had Brian Smith as a wine teacher, and that everyone says that the wine class is the hardest class, and that was my, also going through wine class when you're 18, 19 years old. You don't know crap about it. And he really put a huge impression on how much I really enjoyed wine. And there was so much more out there than my little mind could handle at that point, and really inspired that, obviously.
How did he inspire you? How did he get you to enjoy it? What was his approach?
His approach was an intense one. It was the hardest class at CIA that I ever took.
What made it so hard? Just not being familiar?
Well, you covered these... I don't even know how many pages, like 600-page textbook. And
you'll never know
weeks.
Everything about wine if you study it your entire life.
Yeah, totally. And we had a 600-page textbook that we covered in the whole class. Every day was a test. Every day was a tasting. And you just had to be on ball all the time. And the amount of study work that went into that class, I've never studied like that intense until that point in my life. And it really just inspired me to want to learn more. And yeah, so it was a pretty cool class.
So how did he make that intense experience enjoyable?
He made it enjoyable. Well, wine will always make anything enjoyable, especially when you're underage.
Right.
But yeah, so I would say that there's probably a component to that. But he made it enjoyable because he showed the passion behind it and the real want and drive of that, of finding that next thing, or finding, just inspiring that passion.
It's contagious.
It's totally contagious.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And when you go through chefs that are just like totally in it for the paycheck, and then when you hit a chef or an instructor that's really about the subject they're teaching, it just inspires the whole class. Like you don't have to do much if they're solely behind it, versus the guy who's there teaching about stocks and doesn't really care to be there. yeah, so you get that both level instructors there, but I really enjoyed that. Any of the like these most intense teachers at CIA definitely left an impression.
Any other CIA professors
I
that are worth
totally
mentioning?
forget the gentleman's name, but my front of the house instructor at Escoffier, was definitely a career changing for me because it made me realize that I love the front of the house.
What was it about that experience that made you realize you love the front of the house?
Dealing with guests and doing things like tableside service, which you never see anymore, but like, doing the old school filet of sole tableside, banana foster tableside, working with cheeses, which is amazing. They were only doing French cheeses at the time, but amazing to see the Vermont cheese culture come out. And that's been a big part of our program is our cheese list. And seeing that all come about, that was a huge part where you actually got the gueridon brought over to the table and you got presented with 15 different cheeses that you could choose from that were then cut for you and served to you right there. And I really just love that guest interaction and like having a little more fulfillment on that side of things.
What were the biggest lessons this professor taught you about the front of the house as far as standards of service and ways to go above and beyond what's expected from the restaurant, things like that?
Absolutely. Just the concept of a sequence of service, which we implement at all our restaurants, it just was so new to me. And I hadn't ever heard a restaurant ever talk about that there is a sequence. There is a set course of actions.
Break it down.
Well, we have 25 steps of service. I won't go through all of them, but basically for that you're greeted within 2 minutes or or you're greeted within 2 minutes of sitting down. You're acknowledged. You're not slouching. You stand up straight and tall when you greet someone. You never do the kneel down on the ground next to the table, things like that. But you stand up straight and you greet them within 2 minutes. That's step one. And probably everyone that is out there has been to that restaurant that's not greeted within 2 minutes. And you're just left there wondering.
Yeah.
You have nothing in front of you. You can't do anything. You're just kind of stuck in this place. And more so, I think that is the most important step of service, more so than anything else. And I would say the only other one was getting them checked in a timely fashion. If that first step isn't there in the service, then they're greeted in a good time, then it puts a sour taste in your mouth immediately.
Well, it's interesting because you went from the first experience to last experience.
Yeah.
And those two things are super important. Like you can win or lose a guest on the first experience. You can live at any point of the experience, but the beginning and the end are the two big ones.
They're the two big ones, absolutely.
Yeah, first impression, last impression. You can win somebody over. You can have a horrible experience, but have an incredible last impression and still win the guest over. So it's
totally.
really powerful. Any other like little tricks of the trade, like you mentioned, greeting somebody within 2 minutes or anything like that?
Yeah,
that was key for that experience.
The importance of a host. The host, I feel, is one of the most important positions in a restaurant. And it's the first and last person again that a guest sees, and that sets the tone. And when they arrive, sets the tone for the evening, and will be the last thing that a guest remembers when they leave.
Yeah.
And if they leave with a sour taste, you can turn around a bad experience with a positive leaving by the host.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that host position is probably the most underutilized position in a restaurant.
It is,
industry.
and it's a hard position to fill because everyone wants to be a server and make the extra money serving. But that host is such a crucial position to us.
I recently had Horst Schulze of the Ritz-Carlton on the show, and we go over their 24 standards of service. If you guys are interested, these are the standards of service that the Ritz-Carlton uses in all their restaurants. If you guys want to learn more about those standards, any other standards that are worth mentioning before moving on?
No, I would say those two are our biggest ones, and we've already talked about the standard of taking our employee first versus the customer. And nothing against the customers. The customers obviously what keep us going on, but not having that core of employee is super important to us.
So head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/613 if you guys want to check out that episode with the standards of service, just for a little call to action there. Now back to your story. So it's safe to say that this is probably when you made that transition from back of house to front of house. Now you're focused on wanting to be in the front of house.
Yeah, that was definitely where my focus was, but it wasn't when I transitioned personally.
Okay.
It wasn't until Hen of the Wood did I transition. I had never worked a day in my life in the front of the house until the day I started as front of the house general manager of Hen of the Wood Waterbury.
So take us to that internship, Hen of the Wood. This is your first time.
Yeah, it wasn't an internship. Eric hired me on. My internship was at a restaurant called Smoke Jack's.
Oh, that's right.
Back in the day.
That's right.
Eric.
But Eric was working there.
Eric was working there.
Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah.
So what was your first impression of Eric?
First impression of Eric was he was a freaking hard ass, but also super great. One of the best people I've ever worked for because he pushed you in the right direction. Whether really just talking about that internship time, CIA arms you with all this information. You come out into the world thinking you know everything, and then your internship is meant to say you know nothing. And Eric was very gracious about it because, again, I came out thinking I knew everything, and really I knew nothing. And until you're there executing it on a daily basis and putting practicality to everything you have learned, that's the moment.
So he helped you realize that you thought you knew everything, but he helped you realize that there's a lot more you have to learn. How did he do that graciously without breaking you down too much?
He's not a yeller, so that's always great. And we've never worked good with any yellers or screamers, or I know chefs that have thrown pans and things like that. That was never the issue. He always took that extra moment to let you know if something was wrong or right, but also keep it fixed and was never mean about it.
So in what way was he a hard ass? How did that hard ass element come in if he wasn't
if your plate
young?
didn't come out the way it was supposed to by any, and I mean this could be the way the salad was formed, or even that you had a dribble of soup on the rim of your bowl, or things like that. He would make sure you knew it. So he was on like you had to make sure that dish came out right, or it was caught like that.
So he was a hard ass with his standards.
Yeah,
and not letting anything go. So there's a way to be a hard ass and to gain respect without being a dick.
Yeah,
I guess this is like the pardon my language, my Grudy.
Totally,
but
that was, I mean, I only had a real short 3 months experience with that time, and that's when I was cooking with him. And then the real change was when I moved to the front of the house.
Any other impressions that he left on you during this time? Any moment that really stands out? A story you can share?
One quick one was on a super slow night. There were, the old saying, if you got time to lean, you got time to clean. We decided to repaint the kitchen in the middle of service to this very purple color, which was the only paint that we could find in the restaurant. And we repainted, moved everything, and redid it, and used a whole slow night to repaint the kitchen during service because it was a dead night, and I can't even tell you how many covers we did. It was probably like 10 or so, and just found time to like keep moving. And it was funny because that was he always had something to do there, and he was Sue and I was an intern, and nowadays, like, what right did we have to be like, okay, we're going to repaint the kitchen now because we're slow. But yeah, that was like a really funny.
That's awesome. So you end up, you finish your internship, you go back to CIA. Anything worth hovering over during that time back, or do you want to dive back into now being an industry professional? Yeah,
when I moved back to Vermont in 2005, I got a job at Christoph's on the Green. That's what brought me back here, which was he was a phenomenal chef. Really brought me back into the classic French cooking style. The restaurant was called Christoph's. I really enjoyed my time there with him, and his preciseness on everything being as traditional as it should be allowed me to grow so much during that time, which I really enjoyed. And like, if you don't know how to make a stock and don't do it every single day of your life, like, there's perfections to it, and that stock is the basis to everything else you're gonna do.
I think there's definitely something to be said graduating and going into a kitchen that's very traditional because of the power of getting the what's the word I'm looking for, the technique down and the repetition, and that technique it will stay with you for the rest of your life. But you gotta go. The repetition is so important. You need that time to build that repetition. Any other key takeaways from this time?
For me, that was it. And then, well, I've been wanting to get out of the front of the house, or get into the front of the house, and trying to find my way in. And this was like 6 months after Hen the Wood had opened, and they were looking for, I heard through the grapevine, a front of the house manager. I might have even seen like an ad on Craigslist too, but I obviously knew Eric, and decided to go, what the hell, I'll go and apply. But in a way, I had no business applying. All my experience, I was a sous chef at my last job. I had no right to be front of the house or GM and run a whole staff when I've never served a table in my life. So, and yeah, I can remember that interview very, very precisely. And
before you tell us about the interview, pull that mic just a little bit closer to your mouth. I think we can get you a little bit louder.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to just pull it straight up. There you go. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah. So bring us to first. How did you reach out to him? Like, take us to that first.
Yeah, I think I just called up and set up an interview with him, and they like to make fun of me because I showed up in what I thought at the time a very nice suit. Though it did have we'll call it a salmon color shirt to it that I'm still made fun of to this day.
It's one of my favorite colors, by the way. So I would have backed you up.
But I showed up in a suit, and they couldn't believe that. They only know me as a line cook, not a guy showing up in a suit.
I got you.
And had a great interview, and or I think it was great. They hired me. Or maybe I was the only option. I don't know. But yeah, I got the job.
Was the title front of house manager?
Yeah, front of the house manager or something. The title changed throughout the years, whatever it was. But yeah, I was running I was the host and running the full front of the house program.
What was that transition like, going from back of house to front of house, managing the front of house, not even scaling into front of house operations?
Oh, it was scary as shit.
I bet. Take us through it.
I remember getting the first set of 24 steps of service and studying it with a fine-tooth comb. And if anything, I think in the beginning I was probably way too hard on people. Or I know I was, just because I was following everything with a very strictness of like, this, you didn't do the steps of service. And at first I didn't fully understand that, there's so many audibles that you can throw in those steps. You don't have to stick.
You can customize it.
You can customize it to customize this guest experience. That I was so strict on the steps of service. So if something was not right, I definitely heard back from the staff that I would call them out in the middle of service about something, and they instantly were like, no, that's, you can't, you're throwing me off my game right now. And yeah.
So there's a couple things to take from that. You can customize the standards and make it your own. And the other big thing that I wanted to pull from that is, if something isn't going right, if somebody's not doing it right, during the middle of the dinner service probably isn't the best time to correct.
Yeah.
Do you want to dive into that?
Yeah. It's still a debate these days, because it's a yes and no to that. You have to actually customize it to the staff member. Some people handle it really well in the middle, and sometimes you also have to tell them in the middle in service in order to make the corrections.
Yeah, it depends on what the thing is, right?
Totally.
If it's something that happened and it's in the past, then maybe that can wait until after dinner service.
Yeah.
If it's something that's affecting the experience in the moment and it's continuing to affect the experience, then maybe bring it up. But doing it in a corrective way, not necessarily like a discipline of discipline. I don't. What word am I trying to say?
Disciplinary action around it. Yeah, totally. If you can make a light little joke out of it, or I've always found that to be super helpful. And be light and smiling about it, and no, you did this wrong, but at least when you're telling someone that they're doing something wrong, have a smile on your face, and it really changes the whole mood of it all.
Mm-hmm. So you keep on mentioning these standards of service. Is there like a document or a book where these standards of services are documented that you can share with us if the listeners want to go check it out?
Yeah, I can definitely give you ours. We have every new employee gets it. So
your personal standards of service you want to share with us?
Yeah,
you guys heard it. This is going to be episode 626, so I'll try to include that in the show notes. Thank you. That's awesome. Was not expecting that. I thought maybe there was a book that you were referencing prior to that.
No, there was no book that I've a couple of Danny Meyer's books have always talked about it, but I don't know of a full set of lists besides the one. And ours has been tuned over the years. We're always slightly tweaking it here and there.
That's another lesson right there too, is constant improvement. It's not
constant improvement. We are changing everything all the time, and we'll throw everything on its head at the restaurant, from simple things. I remember the day we ripped off our tablecloths. That was a big deal.
Why did you make that decision?
A, we had beautiful wood tables. B, the linen cost was expensive. And why not? Just we were taking more and more minimalistic approach to our service. And it's funny, if you look at our original table sets, meaning you would walk into the empty dining room and you were the first guest, and what every table looked like when we opened in 2005 to where we are now, everything has just been, we don't need this, get this off the table. We don't need this, get this off the table. We don't need this. Like we used to, from full silverware sets to tablecloths to wine glasses to water glasses on the table, all this stuff. And it's just like, how much can we actually, now we have this total minimalist approach where there's just a candle, one napkin, and we at the Hen of the Woods have a slate on the table that we use as kind of like a silverware holder.
So was this movement, this transition to minimalism, was your hand forced? Because we just got off we literally just finished recording with Eric, and he was talking about those early years where they got just enough to purchase Hen of the Wood, barely enough, and they wish they had that operation, the operational capital to run. And were you guys, was it kind of like survival mode? Like is that what was determining a lot of this minimalism? And which is a totally acceptable thing if it is.
In a backing way, maybe the tablecloths were in there, but everything else wasn't from that. Was truly a minimalistic approach from our end. And we would just bring you what you need. Like the wine glasses are a great example, which was probably removed 2-3 years ago, probably 3 years ago now from our tables. And when we decided to do it, it's just like, well, we're removing half our wine glasses anyway the instant you order, because you get a cocktail, you get a beer, you get a bottle that needs a different wine glass than the one that's on the table. So we're removing half to 3/4 our wine glass. So it was creating an extra step for our servers that we just didn't need.
Less is more.
Less is more. Right? Totally. But yeah, there's definitely, the linen cost is a big cost, and that was, in the beginning, every cost mattered so much. Every penny mattered.
Absolutely. So take us through that transition, 2006 to 2011, how you evolved as a professional at Hen of the Wood.
Yeah, so there's probably 2 levels on that. The first is the working every night. I was very fortunate in working every single night with Eric. He was cooking and I was running the front of the house. We even got to a point where we only had one front of the house staff member besides myself.
Wow.
And we were open 6 days a week. I was working all 6. And our only server, who's still with us to this day, wouldn't work the 6th day. And so I remember very specifically being the only person running the entire front of the house program at Hen of the Wood, from managing to serving and anything in between. And we grew it from there. But from Eric's part, he would definitely push me to always be better, and always, how can we keep changing? How can we look at this? And I think that, I was so young at the time. When I took over, I was only 23.
Wow. And
I was ready to learn anything. And also coming in with a skill set of, I don't have a skill set in the front of the house. I know how I understand the food side of things, but I'm not coming with any baggage of like, well, we did service this way, or this. I had nothing. So this was a first experience. So we, at the end of almost every service, just talking about how we can better improve on things. And we used to make changes like that.
Did you say at the end of service?
End or during, yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing that, it's very common practice to have the pre-service meeting, right?
And we do have pre-service every day.
People call it different things, but I think what's super underrated is the post-service meeting. You have your shift drink and you're breaking it down, like in the moment, like how did today go? How can we have made it better? Not enough people do that. They don't break it down afterwards.
No, totally. And that was more of a focus. Just also, there was only a couple of us at the restaurant. Maybe there was 4 or 5 of us at the end of the night having a beer together, talking about the shift. And you just naturally talk about the shift. I don't know if it was necessarily planned as a post-shift meeting, but it was more definitely like, I'm exhausted, let's have a beer and talk about it. Or The other half was, let's come to this building that we're sitting in right now, which used to be the Alchemist Brewery, and have a beer at their bar and talk about the shift here. So very early days of Hen, we're all downstairs in this bar.
Oh, that's so cool.
The day we decided to go to an international wine list, I remember exactly where we were standing right here at the end of the bar that's downstairs now.
That's pretty rad. So any other key evolutionary moments for you as a professional between 2006 and 2011 when Eric sat you down and pitched a partnership to you?
Yeah, one big thing was, now it seems that it consumed most of my day, was the operational side of things, also the technology and accounting side of things. I really ended up, when Hen was first started, they had an accountant who kind of just fell off, and I ended up just naturally taking over everything. That's not my background in any kind of mean, but I was really interested in learning about it and wanting to get to know all the systems and all the operations of a restaurant. And I just started taking it over, and I did that the entire time. I, learned my way through everything. So I just did that during that whole period. And I was gone for 1 year, 2010 to 2011. And I continued helping Eric out with the books during that time.
Are there any nuggets you can share with us? Any lessons that you drew from that experience that that maybe other, restaurants are not doing, like tricks of the trade, things of that nature?
Yeah, during that is, paying attention to every invoice. It matters, especially when every penny matters. And knowing where all your costs and how it's going out. But the big thing is Excel. If you I really, really taught myself Excel during that time.
Did you build a spreadsheet from scratch, or did you find one online?
No, I enjoy building them. So every spreadsheet that we use at all of our restaurants now, I've built the majority of them from scratch and build my own programs, because that's how I understand it. If I build it, then I know how it fully works, and then I can.
Are there any resources you're going to learn more about Excel?
YouTube is great.
YouTube is awesome. It is. There's literally there's so much. There's so many tutorials, screen capture tutorials out there that break it down, from budgets to time management or scheduling.
You can also hey, I got 5 minutes to set aside right now. Let me try to find something and customize it to the time you have to try to pick up the skills that you need.
Yeah. What about operations? How did you learn about? How did you evolve as an operations manager?
I think the term operation manager can be taken in so many different ways. Like, what exactly does that mean? But for me, it just really meant the accounting was a big part of the operations. If you can't understand accounting, you can't understand operations.
Yeah, and that's one thing you want to. I mean, it makes sense that's where you started to really get a hold over the numbers, the accounting. That can break you. I mean, in an industry where the margins are so small, such a small percentage, if you can get control over that first, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, and you can't put it aside, and you can't destroy it in a peach basket in the office and totally forget about it. You have to have your number and be on top of them, whether it's putting them into your Excel sheets or QuickBooks or whatever program you're using. You got to really just stay on top, and it could be that you be wanting to get back to the kitchen to get cooking, but the importance of that is what will make your business go and allow you to make the appropriate decisions moving forward on all that stuff.
So we're back, and this is a good time to bring up the part of your story where you were offered a partnership at Hen of the Wood. Take us to that moment where Eric dropped that opportunity on your lap.
Yeah, I mean, we were in the most epic of places when it happened. We were sitting in the James Beard Awards at the James Beard annual ceremony, and he dropped that little nugget. Eric was made the finalist list for Best Chef Northeast. He invited me to be his guest and join him at the award ceremony. I had left it ended up being a year period, but at this point it was like 6-8 months into my having left Hen, and I had become a wine and beer distributor. And I remember going to my boss and being like, Eric wants me to come to the James Beard Awards with him. Do you mind if I take the time off to go to New York City and go to the award ceremony with him? He's like, it'd be stupid if I didn't let you go.
Yeah, everybody's regretting that decision. Take us to that moment. When
we were sitting there, and it's just a very awe of the moment, and you're around all these amazing professionals that you've looked up to for so many years, of all these restaurants that you've put on this pedestal, and they're just sitting around you. And we're getting to meet all these great chefs and front of the house managers and wine directors and everyone that wine importers, brewers, that all were there at the ceremony, and it's a total meeting of the minds in that sense. And that is totally was my cloud nine to be on, to be there in the moment of the James Beard Awards and watching the presentation and remembering when Northeast comes up. Of course we didn't get it, but just being there and all that. And then Eric I remember him he's like, what would it take for you to come back and be my partner at Hen? And I can just being like, I wanted to give an answer right then of yes, of course.
What was going through your mind when he said it? Were you expecting it? Did it totally take you off guard?
It totally took me off guard. I did have a lot of thought already that I didn't know if the wine profession and being a wine salesman was the calling in my life. And I missed the restaurants because I love the restaurants. I definitely had to have a conversation with the wife about going back to being full-time, working at nights full-time.
Yeah.
But yeah, in my mind, I made up my mind before asking her, unfortunately, to her. But
you did the right thing, though. You did the right thing. You went to her, you asked her. And
I did ask her.
What were you feeling in that moment when he dropped this question on you?
I was already on cloud nine just being there. And I've never been on a level of excitement.
It almost sounds like romantic, like a proposal.
Oh, it's totally like a proposal of the right time, the right place.
I didn't know Eric was such a romantic.
I know he apparently is. And I don't know if it was pre-planned to do it at the beard ceremonies, but that's when it all happened.
But when we joke though, and it's a proposal, but you in order to. You have to have that level of respect. It's a marriage. When you're going into a partnership with somebody, you're marrying that person.
Oh, it's more than a marriage. I joke with Eric all the time. I see him and talk to him more than anyone in my life, including my wife and daughter. We just are always around each other.
So what was it about you that you think allowed you to earn this opportunity to take over 50% of the business partner? That doesn't happen every day. It's not just any restaurant. This is a restaurant that's at this point, with your help, I think Eric has probably got I want to say not just Eric, but the team got maybe 5 more James Beard nods in that process afterwards. I think total from 2008 to 2016, the consecutive years that they got. So that's 8 years minimum right there.
Yeah. 8 years of making the finalists.
Yeah.
There were semifinals too. We had 2 or 3 years in the finalists.
I think the original question was, what was it about you that
I think why it enticed Eric so much to offer a partnership like that is that we are very opposite people, and we each have a very unique skill set that we bring to the table. And I think what a lot of business partnerships, how they can fail is that you have 2 people trying to do the same thing, and no one wants to do the other thing. I've talked to a couple of friends of mine who have failed restaurants, unfortunately, and their big thing is struggling with their partnership is, well, we both want to be the chef, or we both want to be the front of the house manager, but no one wants to take a look at the books or take the time to do that, or no one wants to do that, whereas we pretty much cover all the grounds between 2 of us, and it's never like, well, I want to do that, and we both want to do the same thing. We don't really ever have that issue at all, which has been phenomenal. And I think that's what's really made our partnership so successful.
Absolutely. You have to get in lanes, and I think Eric mentioned it briefly, assigning roles to the lanes and the duties. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong too. They assume that the other person's handling those things, but they don't ever take the time to say, and commit to writing, like, these are your responsibilities. And it's so important to commit it to writing, because that's how you hold people accountable to when things start to drift. Like, listen, we wrote it down. You agreed to this. It's on, it's on paper. Do you want to reflect to that?
Yeah, absolutely. We did that and put it officially on paper about 2 years ago, maybe a little bit more. But we did a big exercise just trying to put down what each other's roles were. And we semi-wrote our own, semi-wrote the other person's. So we both had say in what each task was and defining that. And we're talking about a single-page document. And it takes broad strokes at things. But it really defines our role of what each role is defining, or what each person is responsible for, which overall was pretty easy. We were very fortunate to do it because it was all like, well, I'm doing this right now, and I have been doing this. Like Eric handles more of like the marketing and social media aspect, but he's always been doing that. So it wasn't like a weird, like I didn't care about that. Do you know what I mean? And my big thing of like accounting and QuickBooks and how we handle all our invoicing and everything like that, he didn't want anything to do with, which was fine, you know?
Yeah. So take us through the evolution of, you guys are going by Heirloom Hospitality is your mother company now, right?
Yeah, Heirloom.
So take us through that evolution. Now you're an owner. Now you're calling shots. You're making decisions. What was the thought process behind it all, scaling this business?
I don't know if Eric already went over, but did you
maybe
talk
a little
about,
bit, but I want your
evolution?
perspective.
Did you tell you about the evolution of the name Heirloom?
No, I don't believe so.
So Heirloom was a unique one for us, and we really love the meanings of heirloom. And if you look at heirloom, it has two definitions. First is the thing that your grandmother hands down to you. This pearl necklace becomes yours, and now you're taking care of it. It's yours. And that's the way we really kind of feel about our restaurants. You know, at first we started in Waterbury, and we've handed it off to our management team. So we have this thing that we really, really deeply and passionately cared about, and we've handed it off at this point. So it's an heirloom in that sense. But heirloom also has a definition of like a heirloom seed varietal, which is something that has been cultivated over the years and then cared upon, that cultivation of this single unique thing that you have, this heirloom varietal. And we feel
passing it down to the generations.
And
right?
passing this cultivated thing down to each generation.
Dude, I love that idea of passing down. And I think that one of the biggest lessons I've learned during this show, I kind of alluded to it earlier, where can't remember if it was this conversation with you or if it was with Eric, but it's the idea of, we don't create experiences in food. We create other professionals, right? We do create experiences in food, but the best in this industry realize that they're forming the next generation. They're passing it down, right? Like I've collected all this experience and knowledge over my time as a professional. Now it's my job to pass that down, the heirloom, like the pearl necklace, right?
Yeah,
here's
absolutely.
this knowledge, this experience. These are the values I have, and it's my job to pass that down to you. I think it's an incredibly branded heirloom hospitality. Like, I love that. It's perfect.
And for them to then build upon that that time as well. Yeah. So that's heirloom for us.
So take us through the evolution of growing this business. Some of the key lessons you've taken from the past. It was 2006, so it's been over 14 years now for you, right?
Yeah. It's been crazy. It took us, restaurant 2 is always the hardest.
Yeah. What was so hard about it?
Well, it's debt. Debt is always a lot hard. We grabbed onto a big project, an opening Hen of the Wood, Burlington. We were building a building from the ground up with the help of Hotel Vermont. There was no building there before, which was also amazing because we got to design our dream restaurant. So debt was definitely hard. It was really hard. We had a staff of 14 at the time at Hen Waterbury, and we needed to hire a staff of over 50. So that growing from HR to payroll to anything in between, to realize that you can't be present all the time at all your restaurants. And that was first learned the hard way at Hen Burlington, that we couldn't be at Hen Waterbury every night of the week anymore, and we couldn't be at Hen Burlington every night of the week. And that balance and always being around and present.
How did you overcome that challenge?
through great managers. It was really what it came down to. We are very fortunate through all our years to have some phenomenal people working with us.
So when you not left, but when you removed your day-to-day presence in Waterbury to focus on Burlington, the managers that replaced you, how long were they on your team before that transition?
We brought a manager on. It's one of the we haven't done this many times, but it was a manager we actually knew from when Eric and I were on internship together. She was the assistant manager back then. We brought her on to kind of first run Hen Waterbury, and then we decided to have her run Hen Burlington.
Wow.
And so we brought someone up and then brought up another staff member.
Yeah. I think what I was curious about that. The reason why I asked is I think it's important to point out that you opened, or Eric opened Hen of the Wood in 2005.
Yeah.
It was 8 years after that you went from one location to two locations.
Yeah.
And I think that second location, based off my conversation with Eric earlier, was like the vision of what he originally wanted the Hen of the Wood to be, but that now he had the means, right? It takes time to build that reputation and to have that, that reputation in a community. And but by taking your time to develop your people, to develop your reputation, it makes that second restaurant, I think, that much easier. I think people try to go from one to two way too fast sometimes.
Yeah.
And they don't establish one well enough before moving to two.
Yeah, totally. And we had been looking for that second restaurant for a while, but we're picky and choosy about where it was going to be and the space it was going to go in. But nothing had ever seemed to click, and I don't know, if in 2008 we could have even done it. So it did take a long time to finally get there and realize that project. And waiting also allowed us to easily access money from investors and whatnot to come in, because they knew us, knew what our product was, and we were able to be like, oh, okay, that's a safe investment.
Awesome.
So that was easy. And then 3 and 4 happened like that. That just seemed like a blink of an eye. It was 2 years after Hen of the Wood Burlington that we opened Dock Ponds, and then 3 years after Dock Ponds that we bought Prohibition Pig.
And it all seemed really organic. You guys weren't going after these opportunities; they were presenting themselves.
Oh, totally. They all were presented to us. We didn't seek them.
Yeah, I think that's a testament to putting your head down. And when people think of growth, they think outwards. I kind of got into this with Eric. They think like, we got to grow outwards. They put all this energy into going out. Like, think of a tree, right, growing outwards. But the true growth, the reason why that tree is growing is because of what you can't see below the surface, the root system, right? What's going in, and that's where growth comes from, going in and doing what you have as best as possible. And then when you do that, growth is organic afterwards. It just happens. Opportunities come to you, right? Do you want to reflect on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the one thing you are missing in there is also we have hit points where we have such great people working for us that just have nowhere to go. And we want to create more opportunity for those people to grow even more with us.
I love it.
And so that has been definitely a driving factor for us in the other restaurants.
Any key lessons in these 4 restaurants that you are operating now, aha moments, experiences that you can take and share with us to make my listeners better? It's funny, we don't actually use the word heirloom hospitality a ton. A lot of people don't know our restaurants are connected, but because we love giving each one its own identity. And I think that's super important. That's an identity with your managers. That's an identity as a brand. It's an identity of the people that come to visit that restaurant. And even though we have 2 Hen of the Woods, each one has its own unique identity to it. And we've always focused heavily on finding that identity, whether it's, again, through the managers, the customers, the branding, and treating each restaurant as its own unique thing. Where's the value in that? Why is that so important?
Well, the value is that you have these beautifully cultivated experiences at each restaurant that are so different from the others, and it is about that experience when it comes down to it on every level.
I love it. So this is a question I want to start asking all my guests, and the mission statement is to inspire, empower, and transform the industry, and we do that by making an example of people like yourself. So let me know, how have you transformed from that person you were just getting started in the industry to who you are today? How are you different?
Oh, that naive person is very, very long gone. But that worth ethic has stayed. And if you want to be in this industry, you need to have that work ethic. Unfortunately, you got to put down your family and everything else and be there at all times.
Yeah. And I need to make an example of you as somebody who, with that work ethic, if you treat it like you own it, and you don't need to be told what to do, but if you take that initiative and you care for whatever team you're on, like, you could possibly own it someday. Like,
Absolutely.
Treat it like you own it, you will own it. And you're a living example of that.
I am totally a living example of that.
I love it.
I remember staying, many nights just to do random projects around the restaurant because I felt they needed to get done, and I wanted to get them done, or I wanted to touch it so I could learn about it. And yeah, it was always a thing that I've just always done. But I've also been fortunate because I love what I do. So awesome. It's, yeah.
All right, we're back, and the first question I have for you is, what is your it factor, a habit, a trait, a characteristic you believe most contributes to your success?
My work ethic, definitely.
What is your biggest weakness?
Biggest weakness is being too detailed oriented.
Ooh, I hear that. It's also a strength, I bet. It's strength and a weakness. Usually your biggest strength or your biggest weakness is opposite. They usually go hand in hand. What is one question you ask or thing you look for during the interview process?
What do you like doing outside of work?
What are you looking for?
I'm not necessarily looking. I'm just looking for a passion behind something. What's your true passion? But without asking what your passion is, tell me what you like to do.
You're looking for the ability to be passionate.
Yes.
I love it. What is your biggest challenge today?
Staffing, kitchen staffing, number one.
How are you overcoming it?
Basically, we're at the point of telling our chefs, if you can get one ahead than people we need to get there. But the kitchen staffing it's going to break this industry. You're
not alone there, that's for sure. Share one code of conduct or behavior you teach your team. This is a core value, a way to be, a way to behave, a way to act.
I would say to treat everyone as equals. We're all on the same team together. We're all here to help each other out. No matter if you're a chef or a dishwasher or a server or a busser. It doesn't matter who you are. We're all on the same team together.
What is one uncommon standard of service you teach your team? This is a way to go above and beyond what's expected from you.
I would say the two big ones is greet within 2 minutes and a check-in within 2 minutes or 2 bites of everything that goes out on the table.
What is one book that's a must-read to make us a better person or restaurant operator?
Danny Meyer, Setting a Table.
What is one thing you feel restaurateurs don't do well enough or often enough?
Care.
What is one technology you've adopted within the past whatever years that has had a huge impact on communications, efficiencies, profitability, anything along those lines?
Yeah, I have two that we've been recently, but just going to an online reservation system. We never had online reservations for years. That would be any online reservation system, but a pad-based system that's online.
Which system did you go with and why?
We initially went with Reserve, and we loved Reserve. Unfortunately, Reserve was just bought by another company.
Resi, right?
It was bought by Resi, and we're still testing the waters with Resi. The other one that I just introduced that I'm totally infatuated with is a company called Plate IQ. And I was literally just working on that before this interview.
So why Plate IQ? What is it about them?
They are, of course, I'm going to talk about an accounting side of things, but they digitize all your invoices. You can pre-program it to recognize, it reads it like it would read you manually deposit or your mobile deposit a check. It works off the same software. And really just loving everything they can do because they break it down right into my QuickBook files, and I can program it to go into all my categories and follow my invoicing exactly the way I want to in a blink of an eye.
Awesome. And this is episode 626. Head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/626 for links to those tools and books if you're interested. And this is the last question. It's a doozy. Are you ready for it?
Sure.
All right.
Go for it.
If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. all the memories of you, your restaurants, it would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom that you could leave behind for the good of humanity and for your legacy, what would those 3 pieces of wisdom be?
First is definitely care about your staff and your staff first.
Care about your staff first was 1.
Care about your staff. Know that your customers always have a right of way in a restaurant.
Okay, right of way.
Right of way. And empower your managers to make decisions.
I love it. Will McNeil, this has been a great conversation. We wrap up every chat by calling somebody out. So who's one independent restaurant operator, somebody you respect and admire and believe would make a great guest mentor like you've made for us today?
I would, as a mentor, I would...
Putting a lot of thought into
yeah,
this.
I don't know if there's anyone in Vermont in particular that I would make a call out to, but the restaurant I definitely have a ton of respect for and love everything they're doing is Misery Loves Company in Winooski, and I think that should be your next step.
Look out, I'm coming after you guys. I'd love to get you on the show, and let the folks at home know, how can we connect with you if we have questions about today's conversation, if we want to come maybe join your team and work with you. What's the best way to connect?
The best way to connect is just at any of our restaurants. They're super accessible, and yeah, just come see us.
I have the restaurant websites in the show notes as well if you guys want to check those out. And again, Will McNeil, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story, your knowledge, your mentorship. There is no questioning, my man, you are unstoppable.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you.